What's going on, everybody? Average Arcader here, and it's time to continue my series of the good and bad of Starfield, where we take a look at the different aspects of Starfield and look at what we really think is good and what we really think is bad about them, and then also discuss possible fixes for these problems that could possibly be done in either DLC or an update. I am not against DLC, so I'm not going to say I write off DLC right off the back. I would happily pay for more DLC as long as they're actually given the stuff we're asking for and that it's appropriately priced. So today we're going to be taking a look at the planets of Starfield. But before we get into that, I also want to say huge shout out to those who left a comment on our last video. You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching and taking the time to actually take a part in the conversation. If you guys are interested, I will be posting the top comment of the last video at the end of this video. So make sure to leave a comment on this one if you want it posted at the end of the next video. All right, guys, let's get into it. Now, before Starfield was released, one of the main talking points was the planets. We were excited, but we had some concerns, like how big they were going to be, how much we could actually explore of the planets, how we would get around on the planets, what we would find on the planets, stuff like that. And for the most part, these different questions did get an answer, for better or for worse, by Bethesda. And for better or for worse, most of these answers were pretty much what we got when the game was finally released. Now, to start off the good of this video, we are going to talk about the number of planets. What we got is exactly what they said. We got around 1,000 planets and moons that we can explore. Well, for the most part, we can explore. I think it kind of, if you exclude the gas giants and planets like that, about 90% of the planets you can actually land on and explore. The rest of them, like the gas giants, you can't, and that's okay. The fact that that is something you can't do is okay with me. I was not one of the people complaining about the fact you couldn't land on gas giants. It's a part of exploring space. It's pretty realistic, and I don't have to land on every single planet you have there. You have a large number of things for us to land on. I'm okay with that. Now, you take those 1,000 or so planets and you break them into star systems. We get around 100 star systems that we can visit as we play through the game. So the galactic star map is actually pretty full with a lot of different places for us to go as we are exploring. I like that. That is definitely a positive. So what do we find once we finally land on these planets? Well, for those that support life, which there's actually a good number of. I know one of the big concerns before the game came out was when they announced that there would only be around 10% of the planets that could support life. A lot of people were worried that we wouldn't find that many interesting planets because of that. And although that was a valid concern, when you crunch the numbers, what it averages out to is around 100 planets that will have life on them, and that averages out to around 1 to 2 planets per solar system will have life on them. Like it evens out pretty good. Pretty much any solar system you go to, you're going to at least be able to find one planet that supports life. And this is important because the variety of different biomes are on those planets. A planet that will have 4, maybe 5 different biomes are strictly the ones that produce life. And this makes sense. A moon that's pretty much dead is not going to have 3 or 4 different biomes. Most of them are going to have 1. So it fits with the theme of the realistic solar system build. Now, on those planets, there's also wildlife, and there's a good variety of wildlife on most of these planets. For the most part, I think the lowest number of life I found was 4, and so far from what I've seen, the highest is around 10 of different species that you can interact with and scan of both plant wildlife and actual animal wildlife. Now, I'll get into the scanning a little bit later when I go into the bad, but it is a decent system that does work where you can go scan and then eventually you can sell that data to certain, I think, characters, maybe 2 or 3 characters in the game that will buy them. I know 2 for sure that will buy that data for sure. So it's a good way of making money just simply exploring the planets, scanning the different wildlife, as well as the resources that you can find. And speaking of resources, if you are a crafter and a builder like me, you're going to find that this game has a very robust crafting and building system. Now we'll go over these systems in a lot more detail in a later video when I discuss the crafting system and the outpost building, but just for now, know it's pretty robust and requires a large amount of resources. Thankfully, the planets are pretty heavy with resources. It's not too hard to find the resources that you're looking for, and going down mining is also not really a hard process. It doesn't require a perk of any kind, just requires that you have basically a mining tool and patience, because it takes up a decent amount of time. Again, I'll go into more detail about that when we go over the bad. But know that finding the resources that you want in a large abundance isn't hard thanks to how they did the planet system. And as regards building, you can pretty much build anywhere you want on a planet. As long as you can land on that planet, you can pretty much build anywhere. Some planets will require a perk, but for the most part, anywhere you land, you can pretty much build there. And there's a large variety of landscapes that you can choose from. This was actually done quite well. So depending on the type of outpost you might want to build, you can find the exact location that will fit that design. This is definitely a positive, even if I'm not that happy with the outpost building in the game. It's still cool that you have a very large variety of different landscapes that you can choose from depending on the planet that you land on, that you can build. Now, another thing discussed about the game before its release was that the planets would be made up of a mixture of custom-made locations like cities, and then more locations that would be randomized and scattered across all the planets. Now, those custom-made locations are done really, really well. The cities per se really shine here. All the different cities, which I think there's about 4 of them, are done really well. They each have a unique look, design, and feel to them 100%. I like exploring them, especially the first time you see these cities. It's going to be very fun exploring them, even if it's not the easiest task to do. Again, we'll go over why in the bad here soon, but learning these ups and downs of these different cities is actually fun because they each have unique character and feel to them. My favorite being Neon, mainly because it reminds me of Cyberpunk, but it still is a pretty cool design that does look good. And when leaving the cities, like on the main quest or some of the big faction quests, you'll be taken to more unique locations that are very well done, fitting that aesthetic of NASA punk that Bethesda was going for. But leading us into the bad of the video and staying pretty much on these locations, there are some downsides. One of the biggest problems I found when it comes to locations is that there aren't enough unique locations and there aren't enough randomized locations. Now, to break down what I mean, let me explain something. Now, when we first heard about this system, many of us thought that what this meant was that for every planet that had custom-made content, there would be several locations throughout that planet that would have this custom-made content. Now, this wouldn't be a crazy high number, but it'd be a good significant number of locations that would then be connected with the randomly generated content. And basically, once you landed, you could explore those regions as you went, going through the custom-made content and the randomly generated content, just like you would if you were playing Skyrim or Fallout. That's what we were thinking, that these planets each would be made up of a map kind of similar to those games that we could walk to our different destinations, exploring the random generated content and the custom made content for each planet. This was supposed to give us a nice sense of exploration, and then it was supposed to be randomized in a way that whatever planet you land on, you would see something different each time you played through the game. This is not what we got. What we got was that the planets that do have custom content normally average around 1, maybe 2 areas on them that have that custom made content, with the whole rest of the other planet being randomly generated content. Now, this wouldn't be bad, really wouldn't be that bad, if we had a good amount of randomly generated content to explore. Quite frankly, though, I think the randomly generated content is very, very, very light for the amount of planets that they have made and the amount of ground they want you to cover. The randomly generated content is way too low. Now, understand, I am not asking for a pool of like 1,000 different locations. What I am asking for at the most is like 100 different locations that are scattered and repeated throughout the solar system. I don't think that that's that high of a number for them to be able to do. Making sure that a good amount of them are scattered throughout the system really helps with your exploration, because right now you are going to see the same location over and over and over again pretty early in game. I know some numbers were saying 20, 30 hours, but I'm sorry, that's just not true. It's going to be way sooner than that, especially if you get right into the exploration of planets. If you start going and trying to mine or find a place to build an outpost or simply want to scan all the wildlife on the planet, you are going to run into the same things over and over again really quickly. Now, the fix for this is pretty easy. And for the first time, I think I'm going to recommend it be fixed in both an update and in DLC. In fact, I feel that every major DLC for this game should come automatically with a pool of randomly generated content that is then scattered across the galaxy, each time adding to that pool to get to a really good number. I feel that that's something that should be regularly done in this game between updates and DLC. And I want to say that Bethesda knew that this was a problem, because I can kind of see how they addressed it. And that's by making the player as slow as they possibly can. This is the reason why there are no vehicles. This is the reason why you run slow and run out of oxygen instantly almost. This is the reason why your jetpack doesn't really do that much until basically you fully upgraded it or found like a really, really good one. Like, their answer for no vehicles was that boost pack. But first of all, depending on your background you picked, you don't start out the game with it. You have to spend a perk point on it. And even if you do have the good setup, like a very good jetpack, and you got all the perks unlocked for it, it still doesn't really do that much. Like, it only really jets you along so much. You really need a ground vehicle to truly cover a lot of ground, and they purposely set it up so, well, we couldn't put a vehicle in it, but we gave you a jetpack, so that should help. It doesn't help. You're still gonna spend a huge chunk of time just traveling on empty areas just because they wanted to drag the time out in between this content. That's all that is. That is where they're dragging the content out, so you have to spend more time traveling than actually exploring. This is to try to lessen that blow of not having that much random content for people to find. And speaking of scanning animals, can somebody please tell me why it takes 10 scans to complete a scan for one animal or one plant? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I get it. You need filler content. You need to stretch out that gameplay loop. I get that. It's been involved in pretty much every game for gaming's history to have filler content to stretch out that game loop. I get it, but you need to cover it up. It shouldn't be so blatantly obvious what you're doing. All right, this can easily be fixed with an update. One update that simply lowers that scan level to like 5 or under. That way, I'm not sitting here focusing on why you're making me do this, because sometimes some of these planets have a lot of plant life and animal life on it, which is cool. Takes you time to find them all. Some of them are very hard to find. And when you gotta find 10 of a very hard to find thing, you're sitting there for a long period of time going, why did they make it like this? Instantly letting you know, okay, yeah, I know why they did this. You want to cover the lines up. You don't want us to easily be able to find the seams in what you're doing. We are going to be able to find it, but you got to help us out by covering it up a bit. That way, our immersion isn't instantly broke as soon as we start scanning things, because we go, oh, I got to scan 10 of these things. Why? Because they needed me to spend more time scanning. Like, this is an easy fix, and I just don't understand why they even did it that way. It would have been easier just to simply not do nothing. It takes up plenty of time. Like, to cover the survey for some of these planets, doing all the animals, all the resources, all the plant life, even at a low number, it's going to take a while. Even if I just have to scan things once or twice, it still would take a while, because some things are found in different biomes, some things are only found in the coast. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's already put into place for this to take time. You didn't need to add that extra number of 10 scans in order to drag that baby out. It's okay. We would have still taken up time. You still have 1,000 different planets that we have to scan. This was going to take a long time, no matter what we did. So you didn't have to go that extra mile and really kick us while we're down and add that 10 level to the scan. So to sum it all up, the idea that they came up with for building the planets is sound, 100% sound. The biggest problem that they are running into now is that they just didn't make enough content for them. What they made was good, but they just didn't make enough, and they've stretched them out just too far. With as big of a scale of what they wanted to do in this game, there should have been a little extra push for more content that is spread out amongst it, so that we have more to do as we are exploring. And that's going to end our video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Why don't you guys tell me what you think? Did you like the planets? Did you not like them? Why don't you tell us what you don't like and how you would fix them down in the comment section down below. The top comment from our last video is this one right here. And make sure to leave a comment in this video. I try to read them all, and then I will try to post the top one on the next video, when we will be talking about outposts and player homes in Starfield. This is a topic that I am very excited about, because I was very excited for these two things when I heard about them before the game was released, and I will go over just how I feel about them in the next video. So make sure to stay tuned. But until next time, Average Arcader out.